key points, what we're going to discuss today and what we're going to explore today is how cloud and web-based services can actually contribute to delivering a digital India. So we've looked at the Prime Minister's vision, but how can cloud and web-based services in particular deliver to that vision? And what are the potential economic impact which these services will provide? And what are the, of course, within that economic impact, how can we make it happen? What are the bottlenecks? What are the challenges? And what is the actual scope here?
For me, if I look at the cloud for the government, I feel cloud is an unprecedented opportunity for the government to innovate. Innovate in delivering services to the citizens and empowering citizens. They are the key facts for a Digital India mission program. We've been talking of social inclusion, then we moved on to financial inclusion, and today we are talking of digital inclusion. And why I say that cloud, because when cloud comes to government, what does it mean? It basically brings three things. One is, your ability to go live of any e-governance initiative has significantly increased in terms of time, in terms of cost. And having had that application live, and if it really picks up, your ability to scale is practically on demand kind of thing. And thirdly, in the new developments, if you look at it, it also gives you a kind of environment which can really get into this community collaboration and doing apps and development of the applications into an altogether different manner. It brings a complete ecosystem onto it. So when you look at it, let me just give a small angle. Supposing there is an officer somewhere in remote district of this thing, and he gets some innovative idea. Today, if he has to implement this idea, the kind of process he has to go to identify where is the server, where is the developer, and then where will he host it. All those things are so much so that unless idea is really pressing for him, he is not going to try. It becomes a deterrent. But if the kind of cloud which we have, I'll just talk about it today we have, and the options otherwise also. So in this thing, he can just get a server without any problem. He can get a development machine, we can get it developed. Going forward, he could just make it live, and if this idea picks up, he can then scale it. And supposing for some reason this idea has not picked up, there is no problem, simply close it, because there has been no upfront capital investment, there were not larger approvals needed. So this gives ability people in small pockets to be able to innovate, to be able to deliver services, because if you look at it, inclusion has been a major problem for government services, that how do you really make these services to the people? And more technology we are doing, we are getting into that there are some people who are getting more and more deprived out of it. But if you can address problems like language, literacy, connectivity, and cost for that matter, and that has to come through innovation. We do not have one, if you think at the government level, sit down and solve the problem of everybody is very, very difficult. On the other hand, if you really let it, innovate, let the innovation happen, and you never know which idea of those 100 ideas coming can become a big idea and become an agent for transformation of the whole process, which today a problem looks quite unsurmountable for us.
Sure.
So that is where cloud gives a huge opportunity.
So Bikram, you are the cloud. So your initial thoughts?
Yeah, so thanks for that, and I think some very pertinent points that were made by Ms. Verma here. Frankly, when we started 9 years ago, we are the pioneers in the cloud, and when we started 9 years ago, things were very different, from what they are today. I mean, frankly, 9 years ago, if you told somebody no upfront investment, here's a credit card, go try IT services, most people would laugh, right? But we've come a long way, and frankly, over the last couple of years, the disruption that the cloud has caused out there in the market, you could go industry by industry. Airbnb for the hospitality industry, Netflix, for the media and entertainment industry, Dropbox in the storage industry. You could go, industry by industry, and you'll find a disruptor who's, using the Amazon Web Services cloud and who's disrupted that industry out there. So huge transformation on how IT is used, consumed, paid for, dramatic shift. And like Ms. Verma mentioned, there's so much there in terms of cost is one. The fact that will cloud be cheaper? Most times yes. Unless there's some specific use case or reason somewhere, but otherwise most times yeah. So the cost factor is definitely one. But more importantly, the other point she mentioned about innovation. What you've done is you've taken away the fear of failure. If you lower the cost of failure, if you take away the fear of failure from people, they will innovate. If you give people in tier 2, tier 3 cities the ability to innovate by taking away that fear of failure, by saying that if you want to go try an idea out, it's not going to cost you, 1 lakh, 5 lakh, 10 lakhs, whatever that number is. It's only going to cost you just a very small amount of money to try it out. Then you've taken away the fear of failure, which actually accelerates innovation. So that, I think, cost, yes, cost is a given. But really, that whole aspect around innovation, taking away the fear of failure, is I think, by far, the agility that it's brought into the system, I think by far is the biggest contribution that the cloud has done.
Fantastic. So you're saying it's giving rise to more innovation and more people to innovate more services. And which brings me to Anand, actually, with Intel, because you're in the device. And cloud to device, and that's where innovation actually starts helping today. You mentioned Airbnb and other players, and that's when you access applications to the device. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess you said it well. So probably Intel is one of those player or pioneer in when it looks at the data centers, providing the infrastructure, which is more cutting edge technology from data center all the way to the device standpoint. So I'll rattle out a few numbers which will give us a sense how important this will play out for us. Part of the Digital India, one of the key initiatives what government has called out, there are 2 or 3 things which we believe where cloud would play a significant role. Hence, the device adoption will again play a critical role in that case. For example, in last couple of weeks back, we interacted with Minister of IT, Ravi Shankar. They were talking about that. How do we scale up the customer service center, the citizen service centers, which is in a few 100,000 right now, to about a 1 billion mark in about 2 years time frame. And when we do that, it's about enabling host of those services which currently government is giving, either part of the Digital India or extended part of the state DI initiative, to enable and extend to the citizens which is currently do not have access to internet to some extent. So you're using the cloud, you're actually taking the service to the last mile. Even if you have or do not have the net connection, but somebody in your village, somebody in your tehsil, somebody in your state would be able to provide those services back to you. That's very, very significant in that. Second piece which talks about is that another initiative which brings into it, thereabouts, one of the clear mandate which comes out is about 17 to about 20 million IT literate people is what government is initiating towards it.
I think for me, the word cloud is somewhat synonymous with the word disruption. And maybe I can extend a lot of what Vikram said on that. So one is it's rapid prototyping. When you can focus on experience and you are not limited by infrastructure, suddenly you have scope to do so much more and at a much faster rate. But also you have the ability to focus on user experience and not about how many servers, nodes, services, where the machine learning is happening. It just removes and abstracts all that complication away. And it lets people that are not necessarily infrastructure gurus or DevOps people focus on delivering value to the end user. But the other part of disruption is, and I drew a really nice chart, but it's kind of this 4-prong approach. And all the 4 prongs promote scale and diversity. So at the most important is regionalized content. When we look at India and the next 400 million people that are going to come online, they don't have the benefit of what we do, which is we were the children that played with broadband. They're going to come in and it's going to be damn overwhelming. They won't know where to start. It's not going to be in English, so they're not going to understand the language or the abstraction from it, no matter how quickly they can pick that up. The second is going to be around context. So we've done content, the next is context. And context is, I'm a farmer. When I say price, I mean price of grain, or price of rice, or price of whatever is contextually relevant to me. When I say belt, it means the belt on my tractor. It doesn't mean the belt that I wear around my hip. And so the fact that services like Amazon are making machine learning, predictive, contextual systems, and the amount of data that's coming make it so easy to compute that and push it out, means that we can suddenly get into a realm where every service is delivered for every citizen in a way that it was almost tailored for them. And then you've got 2 additional ones. One is access. And so the cloud promotes access because it reduces the cost of delivery. And as soon as you reduce the cost of delivery, you suddenly make value available to people at a marginal price compared to what it used to be before. but also it makes things reliable, because a startup is not running on 2 servers and saying, well, I can't buy more infrastructure because I don't know if they're going to come. That was a problem when we built Nibia. We could scale to 30 users a server. And so, do we build we're doing something with Microsoft, do we build 5,000 servers and hope that 1 million people are going to come and only 2 show up? Or do we build 3 servers and then 10,000 show up, which is what happened in our case, and we fell over within the first hour? And then the final one, and I think this is more symbiotic and more anecdotal, is the cloud promotes collaboration. So one, you are collaborating with an Amazon Web Services. Amazon is building services that are available to a wide diaspora of users, of companies that are building things on machine learning. By default, there's collaboration in that, because what one company is using for machine learning will eventually help another one. And the cloud also now promotes open source. Things like GitHub would not exist if they were in a closed unit sitting in a data center.
Anu, let me bring you in now. You've heard everybody. You've heard Neeta talking about what the government is doing. You've heard the other 3 people from the private sector, really how they feel cloud is just going to make a huge impact in the economy in India. From your perspective, what can you share with us around the fact that what are the bottlenecks towards this, and what are the big opportunities, really? I mean, what does McKinsey have to say around the whole cloud and web services space?
Absolutely, thanks. I think the panelists have done a great job of talking about many of these opportunities. So let me just sort of put it all together, if you will, which is something we did in a big piece of research out of McKinsey Global Institute last year. What we did is essentially to look at the question of which technologies have the potential to be really disruptive, as Sachin just said, in terms of transforming sectors, in terms of transforming the whole experience of meeting your daily needs, if you will, right, which is still a big challenge for millions of Indians. We identified 12 of these, of which 6 or so of them are very core to the digital discussion today, and they do include the mobile internet, the cloud, verifiable digital identity and digital payments, which are going to be ubiquitous in India over the next few years. And also automation technologies, which are going to be able to breach the knowledge barrier in a big way, simply by embedding more and more of sort of human cognitive capabilities in devices and in software that can reach people. And I think what's really interesting is that if you look at the path of adoption that you could expect over the next, say, 7 to 10 years, which is the time frame we took, combinations of these technologies will reach sort of near ubiquitous levels, and what it will do is allow whole business systems to be transformed. If you think about a business system as a delivery chain that, say, supplies healthcare to people, let's take a primary healthcare service delivery system as an example. Today, the big barriers to that are simply knowledge to begin with. The doctors who are practitioners aren't willing or able to live in communities where their services are needed, so there's a big knowledge barrier. There are barriers around simply fulfillment, because diagnostic devices, are not available at those price points. Putting together these 6 or 7 really disruptive digital technologies enables you then to have a delivery system that would take just let's say a 12th standard, a high school graduate, train that person up for a few weeks and really equip that person with cloud at the back end powering it, but really equip that person with the wherewithal to be a primary healthcare practitioner in a poor community. So if you add up the potential economic value from all such applications that we looked at, that would total just incremental productivity of $500 billion at the very least. This is equivalent to driving 20% of India's incremental GDP growth through combinations of time saved, cost saved, better livelihood opportunities for people, better access to markets and so on. So it's a huge opportunity. And if you just think about the bottlenecks to your question and what could come in the way, I think there are bottlenecks in 4 buckets which are quite well known. People talk about infrastructure and affordability as 2 key barriers. And then on the demand side, there are barriers around incentives. I mean, why should people, even if you build the pipe that goes to people, why should people do more than access, cricket and social media on it, right? So what is that range of applications that actually meets their basic needs? And then finally, capability, which again we know is a big issue. We think that the technologies themselves actually have a lot of power to address those barriers. So capability can be addressed by a lot of the sort of human interface type of innovations, right, that allow you to interact by voice instead of even having to read, or greater use of video and so on. And therefore, that really leaves us with the potential barrier, which we hope is not going to be a barrier, which is really about the enabling ecosystem, a recognition that all of this value will come only if you promote innovation, allow these platforms to be sort of broadly used and accessible to innovators, going back to the earlier theme of the session, right? Digital India is much, much more than digital government. It's really about enabling a lot of innovation to come in and use combinations of these technologies to meet these latent needs.
You've heard some of the bottlenecks. So there is an issue around infrastructure, connectivity seems to be an issue, security seems to be going to be an issue, because once you're on the cloud, security will be a key issue, is a key issue, especially when you're talking about digital walls for consumers and for eventually government documents to be placed there. So what is the NIC developments which you've done so far towards that?
If you look at Digital India program and its various pillars, it's been very comprehensively trying to address these issues. Too early to actually see the impact, but a lot of initiatives have begun. If you look at the infrastructure part, we have this BharatNet or NOFN project, which is trying to really get connectivity. Yep. Minister has already spoken other day of trying to put these, common service centers, which will help people. That problem of affordability of devices, which is not there, will address, because when you have this center in your community, and we have seen many case studies, people many a time prefer to address these things as a community than as an individual. That is another thing.
How can the private sector support the government in this initiative?
I think frankly, it's a collaborative partnership.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work together? We've spoken about the various benefits of the cloud, web services, how it can help with citizen services, how it can help with various initiatives that the government is driving. So, for example, digital lockers, right? If you want to have 1 billion plus digital lockers, frankly, it's unaffordable to do it in regular, traditional data centers.
Yeah.
Right? On cloud, the price of storage is less than 1 gig, 1 cent a gig a month.
Yeah.
Right? You can do close to a terabyte a year in less than $100.
True.
Right? So now when you want to do 1 billion digital lockers, financially it starts to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think working together is going to be critical, between the government as well as the private organizations. From various forums, whether it's the cloud providers, whether it's the system integrators, whether it's the consultants. I think the whole ecosystem has to come together to firstly recognize the fact that this is different. We have to recognize the fact that the old way of doing things may not be how we need to do things going forward.
So we heard what Vikram said, just talk about collaboration, but your thoughts in terms of any kind of policies you feel should be in place, or clear-cut guidelines in place for this to be enabled quicker?
I think more than the policy, I think would like to give a sense on what Intel has taken a lead right
Mm-hmm.
now. Very, very recently, we announced a few weeks back a project called Ikuka, Ek Kadam Unnati Ki Aur. Okay. What this project does is remove some of those barriers. It creates the relevance of technology and cloud and devices to the people, which is currently does not have a relevance of all three form factors. Second, extend these services to the last mile, be it citizen or students or any other piece which is looking to consume the data altogether. So what we've done is with aligned and partnered with Department of Post, where we have a mission to take the online service providers such as Snapdeals and Flipkarts as a backend to provide devices in that case, host of service providers, local, state level, as well as private players, as well as at the central level, to extend those services altogether and extend the entire end-to-end experience in Department of Post in selected post offices as the extension of CSC to those citizens in that case.
Okay.
So that drives what? That drives in, again, the acceptability of devices and the services. That was traditionally the first barrier. Drive the affordability to the citizen, where we extend set of schemes and promotions back to citizens. Even one who does not have a credit card is able to take 12 to 18 months of free, interest-free EMI-basis devices, and cost of that highly subsidized, and partner with the players, private as well as government, to extend set of those host of those bouquet of services to people to make those devices relevant. So as well pointed out, fellow chair, is that it has to go beyond entertainment. I think as a generation we have seen a very strong adoption of 99 rupees 2G 1 month data free card. So we custom with the data, we custom with songs, we custom with everything else. So it has to evolve beyond entertainment, and to keeping that mission and looking at all the service providers. We started this mission some time back, and the early response has been extremely tremendous for us. So I think we would like to continue in that journey to build the ECOCA framework for Tier 3, Tier 4 and Tier 5 town as we grow in this economy.
Thank you. And on that note, Sachin, I mean, we talked about the fact that it's disruptive. We've talked about the fact that it has to go beyond what I answered, beyond entertainment and actual use. But there's a huge chunk of SMEs there which are actually getting a level playing field now. They're getting a level playing field, right? Because everything is based on the cloud. What do you see, in your opinion, is that going to explode in India? Because we've already seen a lot of innovative apps coming up, which Amazon is hosting some of them. But you see that culture coming from the SME's perspective, them using cloud services more and more and more and getting more competitive?
So look, I think the notion of SMEs using the cloud to grow that's a foregone conclusion. I think the importance is, what role does the government play in disruption?
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, governments that try to be startups fail. And we run the risk of making the same mistake. Number one, governments are not designed around a startup structure. They don't prototype quickly. They don't release fast enough. They're not incentivized to keep failing and push it out the door. And so the most disruption that a government that's going to go through the changes, that's leading India as it goes through the changes it's going, is to step out of the way and to focus just on framework and audit. That's what governments are great at. The minute governments start becoming implementation, execution, delivery, then they start saying, well, I'm competing with the private structure. There is no collaboration. The only collaboration is, tell me what you want, move out the way, and audit that it's being done properly. That's the only collaboration that works in any place. You look at Singapore. They set up a framework, they set up audit, they moved out the way. Young companies will come in, established entrepreneurs will come in, established companies will come in, and they will deliver value, because their whole circle of life is dependent on delivering value.